and it totally changed my life. Like I'd never ever had that experience where someone held up a mirror and showed myself to myself. My friends, my colleagues, everyone was like, do not do this.
Oh my gosh.
You're an idiot. Like, what are you doing? And I did it anyway.
Welcome to the Staying Alive Rich show, Amelia Kruse. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. It's been an interesting journey for you after reading about you a little bit on your bio, and I can't wait to kind of dive into some topics with you during this chat. However, just to kind of loosen us both a little bit, and, you know, the guys in the office are like, you have to ask this question. You know, she's a holistic life coach and you need to ask these questions. If Will Smith calls you and is looking for a career change and is unsure what to do next, what advice would you give him?
Well, the first image that popped into my mind was the famous slap, right?
Don't slap people, Will. Stop slapping.
So that would probably be where I would start with him, right? Just going deep on what was going through his mind at that instance, because a lot of this work is really about getting to know yourself as best that you can. Because when you're trained as a coach, you practice from a set of assumptions or beliefs, which are the client is creative, intelligent, and resourceful. And our job is to bring that out of them and catalyze their development by showing them that they've sort of already got the answers, right? So a coach is never going to say, all right, this is what you've got to do. You know, you've got pen and paper, followed by instructions. It's always about creating a partnership whereby the coach empowers that individual to take action. And so, I think with Will Smith, it would start with going deep on what led to that, because I'm sure the iceberg was very big underwater.
I think so too. I remember watching that going, was that scripted? Is that a PR exercise? What is this?
Yeah.
And then realised, oh my God, he actually really lost his plot. Yeah. Who would be your ideal celebrity client?
Oh, gosh, good question. Just because she is so in the spotlight right now.
Don't say Taylor
Swift.
Have to. Are you a Swiftie?
I'm not. Sorry to the Swifties out there. But, oh, my God. I mean, think about what she's experiencing right now, right? How she's handling herself under this amount of global pressure. I mean, like the Time magazine, everyone's saying that she is like the woman, the person right now. I mean, I can't imagine with 7 billion people on this planet. But for me, I think it's really about the people who are in their minds assuming they are the underdog, right? When that may not even be the reality, right? So when I think about celebrities who I'd want to coach, I'd really be thinking about the people who are more up and coming. Like, to me, that's so exciting versus people who are at that next level, right, and are just managing and maintaining. I think it's that rise that I would so love to be a part of, where you're actually learning from the people before you as well. And in saying that also, like, sometimes I have to remind people that just because somebody holds a certain position doesn't mean that they see themselves how other people see them. You know, like, I work with chief creative officers who've won, you know, Cannes Lion, you know, awards, right? And everyone just assumes they've got it together, right? That their creativity just strikes all the time, that they are self-actualized, and it's usually not the case. Right. And so I think that the magic of coaching can be that if you come with your vulnerability, because you know it's a safe space, you know it's a space that you are able to really let yourself be seen, you can grow so exponentially. It's important for people to remember that just because somebody is in a certain position in society doesn't mean that they they are on that same wavelength in their own mind.
You said everyone has the creativity. What was the other two things? Creativity,
intelligence, and resourcefulness.
And resourcefulness. And you know what? And I've met a lot of people at the top of their game and have had intimate conversations with them, and it is actually quite surprising how insecure and how sometimes they almost need the pat on the back, like, yeah, you're on the right track, and it's quite, even for me, it's quite confronting. They go, wow, I didn't ever thought you would actually be thinking like that, but they do.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a holistic leadership coach as opposed to just a coach?
Yeah. So when I use the word holistic, it's pretty simple. All I mean is that I'm very passionate about developing the whole person. Mm-hmm. So 95% of people will come to me for career-related challenges, right? And that's great. But we want to make sure that you are developing holistically as a person in your own right? Mm-hmm. So that might mean that we are focusing on things, in the personal realm or at the intersection of personal and professional, or if we're focusing on things that are very much in the professional realm, then we make sure we learn from those and utilize them, in your life kind of in a universal manner, right? Okay. So I work with like a lot of parents, for example, and you can very easily learn how you're showing up as a leader at work and use that as a parent, and vice versa, right? So I'm just passionate about being holistic because I worry about people siloing their lives too much, right? Like we're such an individualistic society now, which worries me as well, where we're so focused on ourselves, we've become quite self-centered. And I think we just have to make sure that when we do this work on ourselves, we reflect enough to make sure that we're developing as a whole person, right? We're not creating imbalance in our life where we're just sort of, focusing on one or two spheres, but we're also then able to almost sort of like project it outwards as well and impact people in our lives positively as well, and being a little bit more collective.
What made you get into leadership coaching?
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed until I received it myself. Okay. So I was working at Refinery 29 in New York, and my team was growing, and they're like, we want you to have this coaching so that as your team grows, right, you're really able to kind of be the next leadership at the company. So I received this with a few others, and it totally changed my life. Like it just, I'd never ever had that experience where someone held up a mirror and showed myself to myself. I just didn't understand so much about how I was getting in my own way, how I was communicating, right? So from that moment, I can still remember being in the meeting room, like looking out on the World Trade Center and just having goosebumps and being like, this is the most insane work. Like, this is kind of what I want to do one day. So fast forward 3 years, was it 3 years, 2 years? I'm not sure. I just pitched to the chief people officer. I was like, you need to pay for me to get training in this, because the company at the time was going through a lot of growing pains. Like, it was just a really, really intense work environment. And so they agreed, and I went to night school and learnt how to be a coach technically. And that kind of about a year later, I left and started my own practice. And I think that was nearly 7 years ago.
So that was the catalyst, having the mirror held to your face and going, wow, what a profound moment though, hey?
Yeah.
That is like, not many people can actually say that, can go, oh my gosh, it hit me.
I'm also grateful that I kind of had the guts to do it, because when I was quitting, everyone around me, like the founders of Refinery, my friends, my colleagues, everyone was like, do not do this.
Oh my gosh.
You're an idiot. Like, what are you doing? And I did it anyway. Like, I remember the editor-in-chief. Yeah, the editor-in-chief was like, I'll give you the weekend. Like, as in, don't make a rash decision. And I took the weekend and I called her and I'm like, I love you guys, but I've got to do this. I just know. She goes, then you've got to do it. you go do this, right? And you just come back when you want to.
Now tell me, what's the biggest transformation you've seen in a client?
Oh, gosh.
I'm sure you've had many, but give me one that really, really, you know, you mentioned goosebumps. Give me one that gives you goosebumps every time you think about it.
Oh, my God, such a good question. Okay, so I just have to make sure that I don't, because one of the main thing in coaching is confidentiality. So I just need to think of a way to put it.
Take your time.
I think it would have to be a situation. It's a woman. I coach both women and men, but it's the stories of men, but in patriarchal society, patriarchal society, right? That I think are just that little bit more special because just that little bit harder. Middle management. This word is annoying, but for simplicity's sake, toxic environment. However, she had the talent, but she didn't have the mental toughness, right, to really make it in the world that she found herself in. Creative world, male dominated. It required, so much to just even have a voice at the table, right? So for her, every week it was, I can't be here, I've got to quit, right? And all the physical signs of burnout, it was almost to the point where, as I said before, coaches never tell you what to do, but we do offer suggestions when we've worked with you for a while, right? And I remember putting forth a very simple universal framework of, listen, you have 3 choices. 1, you can stay and just do nothing, right? Just survive. You can stay and fight for change, or you can just leave, get yourself out of there, right? And every time we then revisited this framework, there were the excuses, right? Of like, well, I can't financially survive if I leave, or like, I can't even speak up, right? I'm like bullied, I'm like abused, like I can't do that. There was always, I can't. Long story short, she took a little bit of time off. She had sick leave. And when she came back, something had shifted in her, right? It was almost as if she just needed that space to let all the work that we had done to actually digest.
And process.
And I think and process it, right? She had a moment there where she wasn't in survival mode. She wasn't in the fight or flight. So her chronic anxiety she still had anxiety, but it just tampered down a little bit to allow her to see everything from a different perspective. And I remember a session where she'd just gone back and her whole energy was different. She ended up staying and she ended up learning how to stay and fight for change, right? And I still stay in touch with her. I haven't spoken to her in a few years, but she has gone from strength to strength. And I think that kind of story isn't one that you would read about in a magazine, right? Because it almost feels quite like rudimentary. Like, we've all been there, right? But for me, it's those stories that give me goosebumps. Because it isn't about fame and fortune at the end of the day. It's about being self-actualized. It's about being in a place where you are so contentful, you are confident, you are grounded, so that you can actually serve others, right? Coming back to the individualism that we were talking about before. And she was able then to get to the next level of consciousness, right? Nothing changed about her environment, but she learned how to be in a way that was authentic to her. She didn't change in a way that wasn't true to her, but she learned how to be powerful in the context. And I think that those stories are the ones that I love the most.
It's a significant shift too. It's we talk about, you got to we need to adapt to the environment. This is not adapting. This is actually going, okay, you know what, I'm going to tackle this head on, right? But I'm going to tackle it my way, and having the strength and the courage to do that.
But it's important for people listening to realize that this is all with hindsight. When she was in the abyss, as we would call it, she's in the dark place, and she was in it for a long time, a bit erratic, good days, bad days, but really it was dark. She wasn't saying these types of things to herself, right? It's only with hindsight that she could think this way. But because she had the courage to stick with it, because she got the support she needed, right? Because she kept putting one foot in front of the other, right? And trying and experimenting, she broke through.
Through your work, what have you noticed? Can you pinpoint a thread of commonality with some of your clients?
So the first thing that comes to my mind is self-sabotage.
We're all guilty of that.
Exactly.
I've got a degree in self-sabotage. Just putting it out there.
Don't we all? But I find it fascinating because it is a human, such a human thing to self-sabotage, right? And so we were talking about before, you've got to humanize each other. You have to recognize that we all have our own things we're grappling with, and we all have our own ways of self-sabotaging. There's a great psychologist who's kind of dedicated his career to self-sabotage, but he talks about the kind of 9 ways we self-sabotage. And it's really important to remember, and we talk about this as we go, is that these aren't character traits, right? They are learned behaviors, and they're usually learned when we're young and we're children. And so they're very helpful. Self-sabotage actually starts as a really helpful coping mechanism.
Oh, wow.
But then as we grow and as we become adults, they turn on us. They stop us from growing because they want to protect us. But usually it's not required.
And just for the audience's sake, you said there were 9 ways we self-sabotage. Can you go through them with us?
Oh, let me try to remember. Okay. People pleaser, hyperachiever, controller, avoider, hyper-rational, hyper-vigilant, restless, stickler, and victim. What's interesting is I've never seen anyone who's just one, right?
So I was going to say,
you're not. Some people are highly, highly one over the others, but a lot of people are a big mixture.
We're so unaware of self-sabotage. When you think self-sabotage, you kind of think, the victim game. When someone says to me self-sabotage, it's the blame game. Oh, it's my fault. I shouldn't have done that, or I'm not going to do it because I might muck it up. But it's interesting that hypervigilance is also sabotaging. And I mean, I would never have thought that. I thought it's more of a personality trait. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And hypervigilant is definitely a common one, especially in our society, right, where people are quite anxious. And so the best way to describe it is when you think of an antelope in Serengeti. They are prey, so they actually have to be vigilant, but they're not hypervigilant, because if they were, they wouldn't survive. So healthy vigilance is, I'm scanning the environment. Okay, no lions. Now I can eat. I can look after my babies. I can sleep, right? Oh, and now I'm going to be vigilant again. If they were always vigilant, they wouldn't eat properly. They wouldn't look after their babies. They wouldn't survive. So what we see now is human beings being hypervigilant, which basically is chronic anxiety, right? You can't rest. You can't get out of the rumination cycle. And it has such bad health impacts, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that we have to find the balance. So it's good to be vigilant, but you have to be in equilibrium, right? You can't always be on the lookout for threats.
That's very good advice. In your opinion, What do you believe will affect our behaviour over the next 10 years as human beings?
So I would go back to what I was saying before about individualism. I am worried about where that's taking us. I am worried about the isolation I see in communities, like we're not as neighborly. We feel like we have to do everything ourselves. There's not the same containers there were even a generation ago that allows local communities to come together and for there to be connection. So there's the loneliness epidemic, right? And I think that's got a lot to do with how our society is getting structured, and we're becoming so sort of insular sometimes in ourselves or in our nuclear family that I witness with my clients, but also my friends and my network, that we just feel quite overwhelmed by responsibilities and just don't have as much support as we used to.
Connectivity is super important, and I feel like we're slowly kind of losing it. It's interesting, when I was in Amsterdam a few years ago before COVID, and we were walking through the streets, and there were all these it was a weekend, I think it was Saturday or Sunday, and there were all these little tables and chairs out the front of everyone's house or home. And in all the different streets, I'm like, I wonder what they're doing. So I stopped a couple and I said, oh, is there a festival or something going on? She goes, no, we do this every weekend. All the neighbours come out and we all bring out food and we all sit around and the kids play and, you should come and join us. And I thought, wow. We used to do that in Australia years ago. We don't do it now. We don't do it anymore. So I think that is a big concern is we are becoming, as you said earlier, more insular and losing those really important connections that develop not only ourselves but even our younger generation and our older generation as well. So it is a bit of a concern. Moving on, you mentioned stress is not inherently negative. It only becomes harmful when it becomes chronic, which you kind of mentioned before about hypervigilance. I'm not going to, just so our viewers get an understanding. How do they know? Like, how do you self-mitigate? How do you know that because I know I've been in many positions where I've, running around like a mad woman, not even realizing that I'm completely stressed out until I've stopped and I've gone, right? How do we catch ourselves so that we can, put some practices in place to just, like your client did, give us some breathing space to go, oh, okay, now I can see what my next logical step forward is.
Absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head that it's always about awareness. If you are not aware, there is absolutely nothing you can do about anything, right? So the most tactical thing you can do is build a habit of self-check-ins, right? Like you brush your teeth twice a day, check in on yourself and I think, I can remember saying to someone at some point, like as regularly as you check your phone. Like what if you checked in on yourself that regularly? And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It's just about saying, okay, what's coming up for me? My main philosophy as a coach is emotional intelligence, which scientifically is sort of 5 different things. But the initial bucket, the foundational bucket of EQ is self-awareness. You cannot develop and grow in you as a person, in your relationships, right, and have impact on the world if you're not aware of yourself and what you're feeling, thinking, and doing. Because they're the 3 things at an elemental level that are constantly interacting, no matter what, whether you're conscious of them or not. But when you know, this is how I feel, and this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I'm doing, then you have the power to change them. So if you're checking in with yourself regularly, right, even if you're running from meeting to meeting to meeting, if you have 30 seconds to say, all right, what's going on for me, right, then you're able to shift direction, right, to one that is more positive for you, right, or more powerful for you. You always get to choose what direction you go in. But you've got to give yourself the power to do that first.
I don't even remember the last time I've asked myself. The only time I ask myself is how am I feeling is when I've got a virus or I'm unwell. So,
Yeah.
But I think that's
Exactly.
really valuable advice.
And I think people don't realize that emotions are just sources of information. Like that's all they are. They're not like, oh, if someone says you're emotional, it's not a character trait, right? It's that you are expressing an emotion. But an emotion is there to tell you something. So if you stop and say, oh, I feel uneasy, like, oh, what am I trying to tell myself? That's all that's emotions are so powerful. You can use them to your benefit if you ask the question, what's this emotion telling me? And then you release it and do the work to release it, because emotion is energy in your system. And if it's not energy that you want, if it's not serving you, you have to release it. So that's why a lot of people will exercise if they're feeling angry, right? Or people will meditate if they're feeling anxious. These are all practices that help you release emotion.
I think we're coming to the end of this interview. It's been so insightful, so fantastic, so many good little nuggets there for people to take home and put into good use. But I'm going to finish this on a light note with some rapid fire cues.
Okay.
Now, I know you lived in New York, right? So I'm going to start with New York or Sydney.
Oh, well, Sydney, because I'm here now, aren't I?
Yeah. You're biased to Sydney.
I made the big choice to come back.
I do love New York. I do. It's been a long time. Road trip or overseas getaway?
Oh, my God. Am I allowed to say both?
I'll give it to you because I'm the same. Okay. I was looking at these questions going, oh, I could do both. Reading or Netflix?
Reading.
Yeah, me too. Favourite music genre?
Favorite music genre or alternative?
Introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert.
Extrovert. Now I'm in the fashion media, so I need to ask you this: wide-legged or skinny jeans?
Oh, wide-legged.
Yeah, good girl. They're in right now. They're so hot right now. Favorite way to de-stress?
Oh, music and wine.
What's your vice?
Wanting to escape and be nomadic too often in my mind. Does that make sense?
That's because you're a mum.
No, it's always been there for me.
Really?
There's a chance my life could have been totally different and I would just be a hippie roaming the earth. So every now and then, if I'm stressed, right, or I've got too much on my plate, it's managing that desire to fly away and live a totally different life. Not really a vice, is it? But maybe I shouldn't, talk about other ones.
It's a good vice. I like that. It's the imagination vice. The imagination.
Yeah.
Sounds like your vice. I come to work every now and then. I'm going, that's it. I'm leaving. I'm not telling anyone, and you guys can't find me. I'm going.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know where I'm going to go, but it's going to be far, far away. You know what? It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Amelia. I've enjoyed chatting to you. Where can people find you? And have you got any programs that you're working on? Can you give our audience some details on social media and website if people want to connect with you and talk further about their own holistic coaching?
My website's the best one, ameliakruse.com. I sometimes post on Instagram, but not so much. I've now been writing weekly Substacks, and so that's been great. I kind of started it for my clients a long time ago, and now I've just made it public. But yeah, mostly my website. And the way I've coached has not changed very much for the last 7 years. My bread and butter is one-on-one coaching. So yeah, my coaching is really, really straightforward. I sometimes do some team coaching, but not as often. I really choose to just do one-on-one coaching because that's what I'm passionate about. And yeah, that's good. And motherhood is big project, I would say.
Yeah, that's a lifetime of coaching, trust me.
Right, exactly.
It is, but it's great. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. We're going to have all your details on our website and in the links below as well, so people can jump on, as well as that link of the 9 ways we sabotage ourselves as well. I think that's going to be a
I'll
good
send
one.
it to you.
Yeah.